I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Make notation that all commissioners are present along with Harold Wolfgram, City Attorney. Thank you, Harold, for showing up. What I'd like to do is we are not going to go into a closed session tonight. We're going to remain in open session. I would like to begin as president and voting member of this body. I would like to start with a motion. Motion to authorize the president of the Police and Fire Commission to work with the city attorney to issue a comprehensive directive to Chief Gramza on behalf of the commission to fully cooperate with the City of Marshfield's administrative investigations of allegations currently under investigation, and to truthfully and completely answer any questions posed to him during these administrative investigations by the city administration or city legal counsel. That is my motion. Hap, would you like to?
Yeah, I think we need to have a second if anybody.
Oh yeah, that's right. If I could get a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Open to discussion. Hap.
Sure. So I really would recommend that this action pursuant to that motion be taken. There is absolutely no reason at all, and in fact, quite a bit of reason otherwise to believe that Chief Gramza will be cooperating fully. He has throughout. But this is really a precaution to try to bring and avoid any kind of delay in that investigation in the event that there would be some reason why, there would be a concern for his trying to try to reconsider any approach that he would have in regard to this based on any circumstances that might develop. So all indications have been that he's cooperated, that he would continue to cooperate. I have no doubt he's been professional in terms of his approach to this throughout. But it was my recommendation that we take this action precautionary so we don't have any unexpected delay to bring this to completion. I'm hoping to have that. Again, I'm not handling that, of course. And I can't really, and certainly wouldn't recommend that this body get any details related to the investigation. But the idea is just for us to do everything we can to expedite getting it to its conclusion. And I think this is one step precautionary that will do that.
Other questions, comments?
I'll start with a comment. I think what's holding this whole thing up are these people investigating it. And if you can light a fire into their butt somehow, I think we'd be a lot farther ahead than having to send a note home with the police chief to have his mother call and talk to you, and so you can talk him into talking to her. Mm-hmm. It's I don't understand the intricacies, I suppose. But I'm getting the impression somebody's not doing their job. I certainly hope they aren't getting paid for what they're doing, because this is 2 months now, and it's beyond. It's not even an exaggeration to say this is totally out of line. Are we crossing the T's and dotting the I's, or are we? You shouldn't have to tell somebody who's already doing what they're supposed to do to tell them to do it. I mean, he's professional. He deals with investigations himself in the business that he's in. He understands the intricacies himself. Why do we have to tell him to do it? I mean, I have a hard time understanding that.
Any other comments?
Well, I have some of the same concerns that Mike does. Are we ordering him to potentially incriminate himself?
I'll take that. Again, keep in mind we're in open session here, so this is all public. And primarily the reason for that is just some details, but more than anything else, the technical aspect of trying to get together an open session and a combination closed session and then an open session was difficult for the IT staff to bring together. But that is something I can't address. I mean, if he's going to incriminate himself or not, that's going to depend on what's happened and what the implications of any of that are. And frankly, then he would have to make whatever decision he's going to make. So again, this is one reason why ultimately you folks here that are part of this body will have to make a decision potentially down the road as to what might happen. So you know, we want to try to insulate you as best we can from any of the considerations as to the current status of the investigation and the details of it. And unfortunately, if there is an issue in terms of questions that are going to be asked and what those implications are, we certainly aren't in a position, and that includes me, to make a determination of what those implications are.
Hap, let me ask you a question, sort of from a different direction. Several times in your opening comments, you said that we were doing this or you were asking for it as a precautionary measure. You take precautions from perceived dangers. What is, I don't understand what the danger is that we have to worry about taking precaution.
Well, okay, again, I'm going to answer your questions, even though, I certainly, you've heard this from me before, you've heard it from other folks. I really am reluctant to go into details over this of any nature, and partially just for due regard for Rick. Rick has done everything I think that he could up to this point. The perceived precaution is just simply that at some point, the circumstances change and he's put into a position where he may choose not to answer questions. And without something in place ordering that, then if that was to happen, and then now the investigation gets paused further because there's information we're looking for and we can't get it, we'd be coming back to you to ask for you to take this action. It seems to me, and it seemed to me knowing just how close we are at getting to the end of this, that we don't want to have to be doing that. So that, in the sense of precaution, it's doing something to make sure we don't end up with a unnecessary delay. Do I have any reason to think that that's the case? No, but I can certainly tell you I didn't want to be in a position where I was going to be answering either you or, more importantly, to the council as to, why wasn't something in place to make sure that we didn't have a problem. So I'm not engaged in the investigation. I'm not carrying out the investigation. I even reserve any comment in terms of the timing of it, etc. I'm going to try to recommend everything I can to make sure that there isn't a problem from something that I do have control over, and this is one thing I do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a vote.
Well, I'm going to make another comment. Hap, if you weren't the one asking for it, I would not even vote on this, because I don't understand what I'm voting on.
Sure.
Well, let me repeat. So let me repeat back the motion again. So
Well, yeah, okay.
If you want, let me just do that. The motion I made was to authorize the president of the Police and Fire Commission to work with the city attorney to issue a comprehensive directive to Chief Gramza on behalf of the commission to fully cooperate with Marshfield's administrative investigations of allegations currently under investigation, and to truthfully and completely answer any questions posed to him during these administrative investigations by the city immigration or city legal counsel.
Yeah.
And, here, when you're asking, if I'm asking for it, I'm doing that basically because I don't want there to be some kind of a problem or a hang up and give somebody an excuse for not getting this to the finish line. You've asked for that action to be taken. I don't have a reason, that I would think that something else is going to happen, but this is one part of it that could come up, and it would really depend on the facts and circumstances at the time that could create this. So, hopefully you can see that we try to convene this fairly quickly just so that we don't run into that problem and we can get this to the finish line again, hopefully fairly quickly now.
Randy, I would like to hear what the other two commissioners are thinking
Yeah,
about.
I would too.
Gordy, do you have any comments? Gordy, I'll have some comments too.
Yeah, my feeling is if that's what you feel is in the best interests of this committee at this point in time to do this, well, then I guess we'll do it. Up until this point, we've known nothing as far as what's going on. So what difference does it make if we go along with this motion? We aren't going to find anything out until something is presented to us.
Well, if we live that long.
Dr. Meese? Dr. Meese?
Yeah, I guess I'm of the mindset that we're taking a legal person's advice as to what the best process is to ensure fairness on all sides. It could, I mean, in my head, this is a request. I'm assuming, in a different situation, it could be a subpoena. So it's essentially a request of us to the chief to answer questions, and what he does in that environment is completely up to him. We can't control that. So I'm of the mindset to follow the city attorney's advice to ask this of the chief.
So the only comment I have is, I'm as frustrated as everyone on this commission about how long it's taken. But in the end, the investigation has to be thorough, and as much as we complain, and I want it over, I mean, we've all lived with this long enough waiting, especially Rick Gramza has. And I think really this just makes sense just to be able to tighten up some details. He's been more than willing to participate in the process, just formalizes it a little bit. And if we can get this rolling, get towards the finish line and be done. But yeah, I share everyone's concern that this has taken too long, but we're also dealing with, multiple, avenues that we're waiting to hear the answer, and we haven't had the answer yet. So once we get there, then we can be able, this body can determine what the outcome is. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Randy, I don't know if you noticed it, but there's a couple things on the bottom of the screen. Those mean anything to us? My screen shows like somebody else is on board here.
Yeah, there could be some, because we're in open session. There could be people that called in. Yep. So we're in open session. So any other discussion? Otherwise, I'd like to do a roll call vote. Earl?
Yes.
Gershman? Yes. Meese?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Keogh?
Yes.
Keogh. Motion passes.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we request of the city administrator to light a fire on under the butt of these people that are doing the investigation in any way. And certainly I would hope, I would also question whether they're getting paid for this or not. And if they have, I would hold payment on them until they deliver something. You don't have to second it if you don't want to, but then still agitated.
Agitation is good.
Well, not in this environment.
I'll ask a question. What do we expect to get from the investigator? In what form will that report come to us?
I think, so keep in mind, I'm not in charge of that. I think it's going to depend on what the information ends up being. Ultimately, at some point, you'll have a written form, I would expect. But I'm going to say that cautionally because there is a very specific reason it was done the way that it was done. And part of that was to protect everybody's interest in this. So I think it's going to very much depend on what comes out of this. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get reported back. I will tell you as city attorney that I personally will take responsibility for getting that to you in one form or another. But as far as a written report or what that, I think it's going to really depend on what comes out of this and how that happens. And I think at some point, and maybe the next meeting, if you guys want to have one, I'm willing to address that in closed session. I want to be careful because we're really not, you know, we've got this convened for one reason. It was to discuss this particular topic. I want to be a little bit careful about how far we get to just generally what's going to happen, as opposed to, you know, the item specifically talking just about his information related to specifically Rick's performance. But that said, it's going to depend, unfortunately, as to what comes out of this, what kind of response back or how you're going to get that information. Keep in mind that this body does have authority under the statute to, if there was to be any discipline, to actually initiate that. But part of my concern all along has been to avoid being in a position to do that, because it would be my preference to keep this body completely out of the investigation or being put in a position of having to initiate anything if there would be a problem. We don't know that. We don't know that unless an investigation is done. So in the event that something was, you know, had to be addressed, it wouldn't necessarily even come from this body. It wouldn't necessarily even come from the administration. Theoretically, it could come from a third party. And what I'm talking about there is just simply, you know, someone bringing forth a complaint. So I think this has got to get all the way through before we really know how that's going to work.
All right, thank you. There's no other business. I think let's make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jen. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you for working this evening, everyone.